Hey guys, what's up? Talking about graphs and charts is very essential when you're doing business. So if you feel awkward and stressed out when you have to do this, watch to the end of the video. I'll give you some great tips and I'll do an example so that you can follow through. Let's go. So when we're referring to charts, we mean everything: graphs, numbers, the stock market. That's probably the most common. So let's look at the four top types of charts that you will have to talk about at work. The line chart is the most common one you see. This is like the stock market. They will show trends and often they'll compare a few sets of data. Along the bottom, you might see the years, and along the top, you might see numbers, as you can see here. This one is describing the annual sales trend over the course of 5 years, a couple years. The next one is a bar chart. You will also see this quite a lot. The good thing about a bar chart is we can compare two or three, even four categories. Here we have just two, product A and product B. Another great thing about bar charts is that you can display nominal and ordinal data sets. Nominal comes from the word number. So we could look at numbers. How much has the price increased over the few years? Ordinal is a set of categories. So we can talk about types of restaurants people visit or the top location for holidays. So that's an advantage to a bar chart. Consider using a bar chart if you have an ordinal data set. The next is a pie chart. Pie charts are great representations when we want to look at a percentage out of the whole, like the 100%. We can also compare a lot of categories, up to 7 categories. Now, for example, if you had 7 categories and you wanted to use a bar chart, this would look really busy and it would be hard for people to identify what is the top category or what is the least important category. When we use a pie chart, visually it's very appealing and it's easy to understand. Now, describing pie charts can seem a little bit different than when we're talking about line and bar charts. We'll get into that later on. The last one is a radar chart. Have you seen this one? Radar charts are less common, but they're becoming more popular because we can look at several areas of comparison. And we can use ordinal data sets as well. For this example, we have employee skills analysis. So we have 5 different categories where they are performing their best and their worst: punctuality, problem solving, meeting deadlines, market knowledge, and communications. Another great thing about the radar chart is that we can identify outliers. Outliers are outside of the average data range. So let's say all the top figures are from 80 to 100. So that's our average data set, 80 to 100. But we have one person that has a number of 20. That 20 becomes the outlier because it is outside of the average numbers. These are our 4 top used types of graphs, but there are dozens more, and there are ones that mix together as well. Let's focus on these 4. In order to talk about charts, you need to have the right vocabulary. This is coming from an IELTS textbook, so you're going to want to follow along. Pause the video and enter in your own marks. You should be able to identify what is a pie graph, what is a bar chart. Most importantly, you want to be able to talk about all the features within it. So when you talk to your colleagues, you can say, please refer to the horizontal axis where we have the numbers 100 or 200. Or please look at the column, look at the row, look at the bar graph. Take a few minutes to pause the video and complete the answers by yourself. Okay, are you ready? So after you've finished, it should look something like this. When we're talking about a line graph, these are the lines. So the line is increasing or decreasing. We have the horizontal axis on the bottom. You could think of it as a horizon. When the sun sets below the horizon. So we have the horizontal axis. And of course, this is a line graph. Next, we have a bar graph or a bar chart. This is the vertical axis. So on the vertical axis, we usually have numbers. We have one bar, and the bottom here is the key. The key is like the legend or the answers. So it represents each color for each ice cream seller. Now we're going to look at a table. In general, this is called a table. Tables will have a row and a column. So the row is going up and down, and the column is going side to side. You could think of the column and the row when you're using Excel spreadsheet. That might be familiar. The last is our pie chart. Within a pie chart, you have segments. Segments can be any size, but it's one piece, one category. When talking about segments, you can easily say, refer to the largest segment. The largest segment is the romance type of film with 30%. The smallest segment is drama. Good. Now, specifically, we need to get into more vocabulary, how to use verbs and nouns. Did you know this is the one case where we often use verbs as nouns? When we're talking about graphs, for some reason, a verb such as to rise, to increase, to peak, to grow, they become nouns. So they're not an action verb anymore. They are a noun. Now, remember, you can still use it as a verb, but it's possible to use it as a noun as well. For example, a rise. There was a rise between 1975 and 1985. That's the noun. There was an increase. There was a peak. Let's look at going down. There was a decrease. Now, you'll note I always use the word a before. A decrease, a drop, a growth. Remember that. When we use it as a noun, we use a. Look at this graph here. How would you describe this using nouns? Pause the video and try for an example. Okay, I would have said between the year of 1970 and 1975, there was a consistent increase. There was an increase. There was a slight drop after 1975 with a continuous growth until 1980. After 1980, there was a significant drop, a drop. And it didn't increase again until 1990, where there was a steady growth, a steady growth. So these are how we can use verbs as nouns. If you're taking an IELTS test, this is a great strategy to use. But if you are an advanced business speaker, you should become comfortable using verbs as nouns when describing charts. I have a long list of other vocabulary. Let's get into it. As you've just heard, it is not just okay to use growth, peak, decrease. You're going to want to use adjectives and adverbs before. Now, of course, if you're using the noun, you should modify the noun with an adjective. If you're using a verb, you'll have to modify the verb using an adverb. So these two categories have similar words, but one is an adjective and one is an adverb. Now, I highly suggest that you take a few minutes to write down your own examples. But below, I have a few pairings that you can use very easily. Let's look at adjective-noun pairing. We can say, there was a significant rise in gas prices. Remember, rise is a noun. So we have the adjective noun, a significant rise. There was a substantial decrease in volunteers. A modest drop in temperatures. An unchanged trend over the 10 years. Can you picture that? An unchanged trend. That means it remained stable, consistent. Now let's look at our adverbs and verbs. The prices increased substantially. The production peaked slightly in the 1990s. The trend grew steadily over 5 years. And the temperatures quickly rose. The best way for you to improve with your vocabulary is to choose 5 or 6 adjectives and adverbs that you don't use. It's not in your vocabulary. Maybe the word substantial or unchanged or consistently. Now write down a few examples for these words. You have to practice using words that you don't use very frequently. That's how you build vocabulary. Now, I have 3 great examples that you can use. Best way to practice is to look at the graph, pause the video, write down the adjectives or adverbs that you want to use, and try to write a paragraph. Or better yet, try to just say a paragraph. Then you can unpause the video and listen to what I have to say. Are you ready? Okay. Chart number 1. The income per capita is categorized into 5 groups, ranging from the age of 25 to 47, with a maximum income of $55,000. Overall, there is a general increase in income from age 25 onwards. The figures peak from the group of 45 to 54. Following that, the per capita income begins to drop significantly. The final age group has a per capita income of 4,000 US dollars, 4,000 US dollars less than the very first age group. Chart number 2, this is a line graph. Pause the video, do your own speech, and then listen to mine. Let's go. The global manufacturing market has seen a gradual drop from the 1990s to 2020. As a whole, countries like China, Japan, and the United States had a fairly consistent decline over the decades, while Germany and the UK saw a substantial fall from 1990 to the 2000s, returning to a stable output after that. It's also worth noting that India was the only country to see a slight peak in manufacturing around 2010. This is a pie chart, our graph number 3. Pause the video and we'll begin. Take note that this will be a little bit different because we're not talking about increasing and decreasing. Ready? The various types of transportation to school is largely reliant on bikes and buses. Together, these modes of transportation total at 75%. The smallest and least common method is by walking, which only accounts for 10% of those who were surveyed. The final category is by car, which is accounting for 15% of the surveyed population. Can you see or hear how this was different? We're no longer talking about increase and decrease. We are talking about the percentage of those surveyed. So the percentage of the population, the largest segment, the smallest segment. So try to reword your paragraph. Now, these are obviously just a few ways that you can talk about charts, but the key is that you have enough vocabulary that you can express increasing, decreasing, no change at all, and you should be practicing regularly. So when you have to present in front of your coworkers or your boss, you feel confident and ready to go. If you found this video helpful, do like and subscribe to the channel. It helps me out, but I want to help you out with your English, so it's a full circle. I'll see you in the next video. Thanks and goodbye.